Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, no one opposing this flight condones any of the crimes that these individuals have been found guilty of. It's the process of mass deportation which is fundamentally wrong. It's notorious for bundling people out of the country without due process. Does the Minister recognise that this decision effectively amounts to double jeopardy when those with some lesser offences have already served their custodial sentence? And does he recognise that the message that it sends about the consequences of being a white offender or being a black offender, given the racial disparities in sentencing? I hope the Minister agrees that no one is above the law, not even the government, and that no one is beneath adequate defence and proper legal representation, not even those born in other countries. So will he outline whether the deportees have been granted access to adequate legal advice and representation, whether any have been allowed to appeal these decisions, particularly given the lockdown descriptions and the likelihood that they would have no access to legal aid? On being above the law, just a final point, the Equality and Human Rights Commission has recently found the Home Office unlawfully ignored the warnings that the hostile environment was discriminatory. Can the Minister explain why the government is so comfortable continuing with a key part of the hostile environment policy when it's been so damningly called into question? And finally, has the Minister considered the impact on the 31 children who will be impacted by having a parent removed from this country? Mr. Speaker, the Home Office have got it wrong again and again on immigration, so will they think again, halt the deportation flight and finally end the illegal hostile environment?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady speaks of what she calls mass deportations. I've already pointed out that over the last year, of the 5,800 people who've been removed, only 33 have been of Jamaican nationality. She mentioned black versus white. She was insinuating in her question there was some element of underlying racism in this. But I've pointed out already that the majority of people, the vast majority of people who are removed or have been removed this year, have been removed to European countries. This policy applies to people from Spain and France and Italy as much as it does to people from Jamaica. There is no element of discrimination in this policy whatsoever, and she was completely wrong to insinuate that in some way there was. She asked a question about double jeopardy. She said, well, they've been punished once by a prison sentence already. But I say this, if somebody comes to this country and commits a serious criminal offence and puts our constituents at risk, it is right that once they serve their sentence, or a great part of it, they should be removed. And it's not just me that thinks that, it's the Labour members who voted for this law in 2007 who think that, some of whom are sitting in this chamber today. She mentions the ECHR and the compliant environment. This is nothing to do with the compliant environment. This is about implementing the 2007 Borders Act as we are obliged to do, and in terms of due process, there are ample opportunities to complain and appeal, as many people do. I've mentioned already the case of a murderer who was taken off this flight just a few days ago following legal appeals. We are protecting our fellow citizens, and I suggest the Honourable Lady takes a similar approach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cost of deportation, economic, ethical and most importantly human, cannot be justified. Can the Minister confirm that an equalities impact assessment has been completed regarding these proposed deportations to demonstrate that you have paid due regard to equalities legislation?
The Honourable Lady talks about human cost. Let me tell her about the human cost caused by these criminals. What about the children who have been sexually assaulted by these criminals? What about the victims who have been murdered by these people? What about the victims of violent assault? What about the people whose lives have been ruined by drug addiction or who have been the victims of rape? What about those human tragedies? The Honourable Lady and many members opposite appear to have nothing whatsoever to say about the human tragedy of the victims. Let's put the victims at the centre of today's debate. They are the people we should be standing up for and speaking for. This government will protect them. Why won't she?
Let's head to Hackney with Diana Abbott. Diane Abbott.
Does the Minister accept that many people feel that this mass deportation is both cruel and potentially dangerous? Cruel because he is separating families of people who have served their sentence, separating families just weeks from Christmas, and possibly dangerous because he is deporting vulnerable people, communities we know are particularly vulnerable to coronavirus, in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, the Right Honourable Lady asks about whether this is the right thing to do. And the answer to that question is categorically yes, an answer that she herself gave when she voted in 2007 for the Act of Parliament under which the government is required to carry out these deportations. So the Honourable Lady herself voted for this measure. In relation to coronavirus risks, we've been carrying out these flights, as I said already, throughout the entire summer and autumn period, using methods which the High Court has found to be COVID-safe in immigration removal centres, using things like reverse cohorting, distancing, frequent testing, temperature checks, and so on and so forth. So I do not accept the point that the Right Honourable Lady made. And let me say again, the overwhelming consideration for members of this House should be protection of our constituents.